Chapter Star, born in chains, he came not in fire, but in silence, not in prophecy fulfilled, but in prophecy broken. You listen now to a voice that is not voice, a shadow caught in crystal, a wound echoing forever through the veins of the Force. Mine is not the tale of victory, but of a child born beneath twin suns, and beneath them, scorched dot, he was not born of mother, nor of father, as you understand it. His coming was not of desire, but design. Whispers say the Force conceived him, as if to balance itself, or to punish. But such whispers lie. Everything lies. Even the Force in the dust-veiled slums of Mos Espa, upon the dead world called Tatooine, a woman cried out beneath rusted ceilings. Her name Shmi, her chains unbroken, her pain absolute. And in that moment, with no man to blame, she brought forth a child, Anakin, not a name born of nobility or myth, but of dust, of scrap, of breath stolen from air that burned the lungs. He did not cry as others did. He watched, eyes open, as if the galaxy were already too small for him. Slavery was his first lesson, not taught, but lived. He served the bloated greed of Watto, that winged beast of coin and cruelty. He swept, he soldered, he scraped, and in secret he built. He was a child who should have broken, and yet he made machines sing. Engines wept under his touch. Words came to him before they were taught. He knew the stars, not by name, but by pull. There are those who say he was gifted, chosen, but let me whisper what the Jedi would not. He was not chosen, he was made, and the Force did not bless him. It bled into him. He flew when he should have fallen. In the dust-choked racing pits of Bunta Eve, he faced death with joy. Metal screamed around him. Pods shattered, and still he won. Not by luck, by instinct, by will, and so came the Jedi. They stepped from the stars like spectres, strangers cloaked, in silence. One among them, tall, stern, stubborn, watched Anakin and did not understand him. Qui-Gon Jinn. He saw not the boy, but the signal, the echo of prophecy, the possibility of power. He asked questions, and the answers frightened him. No, father. Born of midichlorians, a conception not of love, but of imbalance. The council would never allow it. But he disobeyed. He wagered on the child, with dice and dreams and desert wind. He played fate's game and won. Anakin was freed, but not his mother. The chain was severed, but only halfway. And what is half of freedom, if not the cruelest form of slavery? He left her, weeping, smiling, waving. The boy who would become Shadow began with abandonment. He boarded the Jedi ship, and the Force whispered louder, not peace, not balance, but hunger. Do you hear it now, as I do? The tremble in the current, the song beneath silence. The Force had not chosen him to be a savior. It had selected him as a fracture, a wound that walked the Sith, felt it too, though cloaked. Far above, in palaces of glass and corruption, one watched hidden beneath the name Palpatine. He smiled as the boy departed Tatooine, for he knew that to shape the galaxy, you do not destroy temples. You raise children, and so the first gate was opened. Anakin was no longer a slave of Watto. He was now a servant of prophecy, a piece in a game older than light. He sat alone in the cold chambers of the Jedi cruiser, hands folded, eyes wide, and as stars blurred past the viewport, He whispered only one word to himself. Mum. The Jedi spoke of detachment, of serenity, of releasing all fear. But fear was all he had ever known. And where fear roots deep, darkness finds its path. O you who listen now, with breath slowing, let your mind dim as his did. Let the stars blur into shadows. The boy has left his home, but the pain has not left him. The Force shudders in anticipation. The crystal I am entombed in hums. The sky is silent, but not for long. Chapter 2. The temple that wears light like a mask piece is not the absence of suffering. It is the silence imposed to bury it. He came to Coruscant, cloaked not in darkness, but in awe. The boy who outraced death in the sands now rose in steel toward a world of towers and illusions. The Jedi Temple pierced the clouds like a blade of stillness. Stone older than the Republic, polished and prayed over for millennia. Yet beneath its gleaming halls, rot festered in silence. They called it a sanctuary, a place of wisdom, but the Force whispered otherwise. Anakin entered, barefoot breath, shallow. The corridors hummed with sacred silence. Eyes watched him, too many. Children saw a stranger. Masters saw a threat. He was not like them, too old, too passionate, too powerful. Yoda, ancient beyond counting, peered into the boy and saw not a student, but a storm. Fear in him, I sense attachment, shadow, and yet Qui-Gon knelt before the council, begged not as a Jedi, but as a believer. He is the chosen one. He will bring balance. The words echoed through the chamber, heavy, absolute. But the meaning was lost even then. Balance is not peace. Balance is correction, and to correct, something must fall. The council refused, denied the boy entry, too dangerous, too uncertain. But then the darkness moved. A warrior of the Sith, long thought extinct, emerged from myth to strike. Darth Maul, a blade wielder of crimson purpose. He killed a master, and that death opened the door. In death, Qui-Gon gave the boy his first inheritance, uncertainty. Obi-Wan, newly knighted, took Anakin as his Padawan, not from trust, but from duty. And so began the boy's second slavery to the Jedi Code. They gave him robes, but not comfort. They gave him teachings, but not answers. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. These words recited like scripture promised purity. But where was the mercy? He missed his mother. He dreamed of her face in darkness. He wept in secret. And when his tears were seen, they told him, let go. But how does a child let go of the only one who ever loved him without condition? The other younglings sensed his disquiet. They whispered. They avoided Dot, and Anakin learned to smile falsely, to hide, to pretend. Obi-Wan trained him with diligence, taught him forms, philosophy, rules etched from ancient thought. But he was not Qui-Gon. He did not see Anakin's soul, only the danger it might become. And so the boy grew, among ghosts. The temple walls shimmered with the past. Statues of long-dead masters, scrolls of victories hollow with age. Rooms where voices once chanted, now silent. It was sacred, yes, but not alive. The Force there was calm. Too calm, it did not breathe, it watched. And beneath that calm, something began to rebel. Anakin sparred with the other Padawans. He was faster, stronger, smarter, and lonelier. Be mindful of your feelings, Obi-Wan would say. as if feelings were the enemy. But Anakin's feelings were himself. He loved too easily, trusted too hard, felt too much, and in the temple such things were not virtues, they were threats. The council tolerated him, but did not welcome him. He passed trials, but never truly belonged, and always, the prophecy whispered when they thought he could not hear. Is he the one? Will he destroy us? What if we were wrong? Even in sanctuary, he was alone, and in that loneliness he began to doubt, not the Jedi, but himself. For the Force would sometimes surge within him, in training, in dreams, a flood, a fire, a presence. Sometimes he saw flashes of things that had not happened, yet storms, screams, a woman in pain. The future bled into his sleep, and no one could explain why. Not Obi-Wan, not Yoda, not the archives. The only voice that soothed him came not from within the temple, but from the halls of power nearby. A man named Palpatine, a senator, a friend. He listened, he praised, he called Anakin not dangerous, but extraordinary. And so, while the Jedi offered rules, Palpatine offered understanding, and the seed beneath the mask of light began to grow. Do you see it now? The temple that claimed the light, but could not see its own blindness. They feared the dark, but they never saw the crack forming in the wall, and through that crack, the future would bleed. Chapter 3: The woman wrapped in flame love, when forbidden, burns not with passion, but with prophecy. She returned not as he remembered her. Not the girl queen of Naboo, clothed in ceremony and duty. No, she returned as a senator, a woman now, wounded by wars, not yet named. Her voice still calm, but her eyes carried storms. Podmamida L.A. To others, she was a politician. To the Jedi, an ally. To the Republic, a symbol. But to Anakin, she was the first fire, the hidden sun beneath his skin, the ache that never left. He hadn't seen her in years, and yet when she walked into the chamber, his heart remembered, not as a Jedi. As a boy, he bowed too deeply, spoke too warmly, smiled too long, and she laughed. A sound that did not belong in a galaxy cracking beneath the weight of lies. That laugh would one day be his ruin. Obi-Wan noticed. He cautioned, attachment is forbidden. But Anakin heard only a riddle, one he chose to misunderstand. Why would the Force make her exist? If love were a sin, they were assigned together. Padme's life had been threatened, a failed assassination. And so the Jedi dispatched him, not to kill, but to protect, to be near her. The Order, in its blindness, had offered him temptation and called it a duty, so they returned to Naboo, to fields, to silence, to a place untouched by war, and there it began, not with a kiss, but with a glance held too long, a silence that stretched into something sacred. They spoke of politics, of peace, of systems breaking under the weight of greed, but behind each word was the pulse of what neither dared name. Longing Padme tried to resist. She spoke of vows, of danger, of duty, but love does not ask permission, and destiny cannot be reasoned with, Anakin confessed. Not as a Jedi, as a soul undone. I am haunted by the kiss you should never have given me. And in that moment, the Force shifted. It did not scream, it watched. It always watches. They married in secret, not in gold or ceremony, but beneath the sky, with only droids to witness and stars to mourn. No witnesses, no blessings, only silence. The galaxy called. it treason. The Jedi would have called it betrayal, but for them it was sanctuary, a secret kept from the Council. From Obi-Wan, from all who believed that love leads to ruin. But ruin was already coming. Not from love, but from war. The Clone Wars had begun. A manufactured plague spread by hands unseen. And Anakin, newlywed, newly named Jedi Knight, was sent to lead. Not as a peacekeeper. As a general, they gave him command. They gave him troops. They gave him license to kill. And still, his heart beat only for her. Each battle won was a day survived closer to her arms. But each death, each flame, each cry left something colder behind his eyes, and she saw it. Padma, waiting in corridors. Between sessions, saw the change. He smiled, but the smile was jagged. He spoke, but the words were distant. She feared for him, not because he was changing, but because he was right. The Republic was rotting. The Senate was blind. The Jedi were arrogant, and through him, she began to see the truth behind the illusion. And yet, even as the galaxy burned, they found moments, small, sacred hours stolen from the fires. Laughter, touch, sleep, tangled with sleep. She would place her hand upon his chest and feel the storm within him. She did not fear it. Not yet, but the Force. It did, for it knew what they did not. That love, when buried beneath silence and sin, does not heal it, erupts, and somewhere far above, in halls, carved from politics and shadow, another watched, palpitated. He saw their secret, not with eyes, but with intent, and he smiled. Because love, true blinding love, is the easiest path to fear, and fear is the door. Chapter 4, The Clone War. A machine of flesh and lies. Not all wars are waged for victory. Some are summoned only to consume. War came not with justice, but with design. It was no accident, no tragedy of misunderstanding. It was crafted, forged in chambers beneath the Republic, fed by whispers older than the Jedi. The Clone Wars were not war. They were ritual, and Anakin Skywalker was placed at its heart. He was no longer a learner. He was a general, a weapon dressed in robes. He led legions of engineered life, clones, birthed for battle, trained to obey, conditioned to die. They called him General Skywalker. They followed him into fire, not because they must, but because they believed, and he did not let them die without mourning them. Each loss etched deeper into him. Each scream echoed longer. The Jedi called it sacrifice, but to Anakin it was failure. He was not trained for war. Not truly. He was trained to serve peace. But the Jedi had forgotten peace. They had taken seats in the war room, issued commands, become tacticians, not sages. And through it all, Anakin obeyed. He saved worlds, freed systems, destroyed threats, but each victory cut another thread from the cloth of who he once was, and he began to enjoy it. Not the killing, but the control. In battle, he was free. No lectures, no questioning, no whispered warnings about fear, only action and power. He became legend, feared by the Separatists, praised by the Republic, whispered about by his own council. They could not contain him, and worse, they knew it. But they needed him. The war had made them weak, dependent, and so they fed the flame, and pretended it was a candle. He was not alone, not always by his side. A Padawan, Ahsoka Tano, young, fierce, unyielding. She did not revere him as others did. She challenged him, and in her he saw something familiar, not in power but in pain. She questioned the Jedi, not from rebellion, but from clarity. And when the Order betrayed her, falsely accused, nearly exiled, she walked away, not in hatred, but in truth. Anakin begged her to stay. She did not, and another thread within him tore loose. He looked to the council and saw not wisdom but blindness. He looked to Obi-Wan and saw not brotherhood but distance. He looked to Padma and saw the only real thing left. And still the war burned. Planets reduced to ash. Jedi lost. Clones buried in unnamed graves. And above it all, guiding every move, stood Chancellor Palpatine. Anakin trusted him, more than the Council, more than himself. The Chancellor listened. He praised. He called him by name, not by title, and with each battle, with each death. Anakin leaned closer. Palpatine spoke of the Sith, not as monsters, but as seekers of truth. He whispered of the Force as it truly was, not light, not dark, but will. And Anakin listened, because no one else had the courage to say what he already believed, that the Jedi had become liars. They spoke of balance, yet sent children to war. They spoke of compassion, yet demanded emotional silence. They spoke of peace, yet celebrated victory with sabers drawn. And Anakin, the chosen one, the golden blade of the Republic, could no longer pretend. He fought, he bled, he mourned, and no one thanked him, only Palpatine offered comfort. And deep within, beneath armor still unformed, beneath the name still not taken, Darth Vader began to wake, not as rage, but as certainty. The war was not chaos, it was preparation, and the galaxy would not be saved by the Order that started it. It would be saved by the one strong enough to end it. Chapter 5. The Serpent in the Chancellor's Cloak. The most dangerous masks are worn by those who never remove them. He was always there, at the edge of council chambers, in the shadow of parades, in the warm glow of Anakin's victories. The Chancellor, Palpatine, beloved by the Senate, trusted by the Jedi, adored by the people, and worshipped quietly by Anakin. He had watched the boy grow, not as a mentor, as a gardener, patient, careful, deadly. Each moment of pain Anakin endured, Palpatine soothed. Each wound left by Jedi restraint, Palpatine filled with whispered validation. You are the most gifted Jedi I have ever seen. They fear you, Anakin. They sense your strength, and they envy it. He knew exactly what to say, not to seduce, to reveal, to peel back the layers the Jedi had bound around the Chosen One's soul. What is a serpent, if not a truth? Spoken at the right time. And Anakin listened. He did not see treason. He saw clarity. The war worsened. The Jedi grew suspicious. But they suspected the wrong shadows. Palpatine expanded his powers. Emergency decrees, executive control. A Senate too weary to resist. And, through it all, he smiled. Anakin began to visit him more. Late hours, private rooms, conversations the council would not approve. They spoke of politics, yes, but beneath that, they spoke of power, not to dominate, to save. Anakin believed the war would end soon, but Palpatine warned him, the Jedi were not the solution. They have lost their way. They are no longer guardians of peace. They are generals, and they will not give up their power easily. Anakin knew the truth of this. He had seen it, but even then he hesitated. He still believed in Obi-Wan, still held on to hope that the Jedi could change, but hope is a thread easily cut, and so offered something deeper, not philosophy, but a secret, a tale whispered in the dark. There was once a Sith Lord, so powerful in the Force he could prevent the ones he loved from dying. Anakin did not breathe. He did not blink. Darth Plagueis, Palpatine said. A master of life and death. He could save others, but not himself. A lie, a myth, or a promise. Anakin did not ask, because he needed it to be true. The dreams had returned Padam. In pain, dying, screaming in childbirth, and the Jedi, when he asked for help, offered only riddles. Let go of all you fear to lose. Double quotes. No, he would not lose her. Not like his mother. Not again. And Palpatine saw the door swing open. He placed his hand upon Anakin's shoulder, not as ruler tonight, but as father to son. If one is to understand the great mystery, one must embrace the larger view of the Force, not just the narrow dogma of the Jedi. The Jedi saw the trap, but too late. They demanded Anakin's spy on the Chancellor, not in justice, but in fear. Anakin agreed. But inside, another thread snapped. He had given them everything. Blood, battle, loyalty, and they gave him suspicion. But Palpatine gave him purpose. And so one night, in the silence between battles, in chambers lit by Coruscant's eternal glow, Palpatine shed the last of his mask, not with violence, with invitation. You know, don't you? He said, his voice come certain. I am a Sith Lord. Anakin stood frozen, not with fear, with certainty fulfilled. He did not draw his saber, not at first, because he needed it to be untrue. And yet the Sith offered what the Jedi would not, power to save the one he loved. He should have struck. He should have screamed, but all he said was, I will need time to decide. And Palpatine, as ever, nodded, understanding, patient, like a spider welcoming the fly already wrapped in silk. Chapter 6. Dreams of her dying. Some visions come not to warn but to bind. He did not sleep anymore, not truly, only drifted, caught between waking and drowning, between flame and breath, between love and death. And always she was there, Padam, falling, screaming, hands outstretched, but never reaching him. Each night the dream returned. Each night he awoke with breath torn from his chest and fingers trembling with helplessness. In the dream, she gave birth. She died, and he was too late. Always too late. The Force did not speak in riddles now. It showed, with cruel precision, and Anakin, who once believed dreams were nothing, now believed in nothing else. He went to her, held her, studied her eyes for signs of the end. She smiled, she laughed, she was glowing with life. But he saw only the grave. He told her, and her smile dimmed. You're trembling, she said. You're afraid. I won't lose you. He replied, but even as he swore it, the dream returned. Stronger, sharper, blood on her lips, the child in her arms. A death he could not prevent. And the Force silent, the Jedi blind. He turned to Yoda as a last plea. I've seen someone die, someone I love, and I'm afraid it will happen. Yoda closed his eyes, old, distant, cold. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Let go, let go. He would rather burn the stars than let her die. The Jedi could not save her. They would not even try, and so he turned, not from the Jedi, from their silence, to the only one who understood that death is unacceptable. Palpatine. He spoke not as Sith, not yet. He spoke as a man who knew there is a way. The dark side of the Force holds knowledge that the Jedi would never teach you. The words were seeds, planted in soil already cracked with fear. Palpatine offered no spells, No secrets, only hope, a path. And Anakin, desperate, unraveling, followed, not with footsteps, but with thoughts. He began to see the Jedi as they truly were. Obstacles, they spoke of destiny, but denied him agency. They spoke of peace, but sent him to war. They spoke of detachment, but would never understand what Pad meant to him. He began to watch them with suspicion and sorrow. Obi-Wan, his brother, his teacher, his friend Ivan, he could not help. And so, Anakin drifted further. Every act of kindness from the Jedi felt now like deception. Every lesson like control. Only Palpatine seemed to trust him. You were strong enough to save her, he said. You need only the courage to break their chains. Anakin wept, not from sadness, but from certainty. The path ahead was no longer clouded. It was lit by fire, and in the distance, the shape of the Sith waited like a crown carved from Ashdod. He did not yet kneel, but his soul had already bent. Chapter 7: The Trial of Shadows. Some betrayals wear no face until the moment they are remembered forever. The war raged on. Worlds crumbled. Systems collapsed. The Jedi triumphed, and still the darkness spread. But it was not in the stars that the wound bled deepest. It was within him. Anakin, chosen, feared, alone. Obi-Wan had left, sent far from Coruscant on the Council's bidding. A final campaign, Grievous, must be destroyed. But for Anakin, his master's departure was not mission. It was abandonment. And into that void stepped the shadow Palpatine. He no longer whispered, he spoke plainly. You do not trust them, and why? Should they use you, send you to die, then question your loyalty? Anakin did not argue. He simply listened. The words echoed the ones he had already begun to think. Words he had once silenced. Now they became truth. He was summoned to the council, not to receive honor, but a test. They offered him a seat, not rank, no title of master. You are on this council, they said, but we do not grant you the rank of master. The insult was a blade. He had led armies, won battles, saved their lives, and still they kept him beneath them. Mace Windu's eyes held suspicion. Yoda's gaze, caution. Obi-Wan was gone. There was no defense, no trust, only Ordersthen. Another command, not to protect, to spy. On the Chancellor, you will report on all his dealings. The final fracture. They asked him to betray the only man who had never doubted him. Anakin left the chamber not a Jedi, but something less something other. He returned to Palpatine that night, sat in the golden light of the office that had always felt warmer than the temple, and said nothing, because now there was nothing left to say. Palpatine smiled. You see them now, don't you? The Council, the Jedi, how small they truly are. Anakin did not nod. He simply remained the serpent. Did not press. He simply waited. Later that night, Anakin stood alone, looking over the endless city and the Force. Offered no answer. It no longer ebbed. It watched, like a parent who knows the child is about to fall. He thought of Padme. The dream. The death not yet real, but felt. He could not lose her, and the Jedi would not save her. Only one path remained. The trial was not in the council chambers, not in the war, it was within. And he was failing, because failure meant love. Failure meant her life. He stood at the edge of a choice he had already made, and behind him, the echo of footsteps. Not OBI-1, not a Jedi, not light. The dark was approaching, not with rage, but with purpose. Chapter 8. The Gift of the Sith. What is more seductive than power? The illusion that it will save the ones you love. He returned to the Chancellor's chambers, not as a Jedi, but as something already severed. The night hummed with prophecy, the stars held their breath, and in the center of it, Anakin stood, divided. Not by choice, but by desperation. He had tried the path of light, had given the Jedi his faith, his blood, his obedience, and still the Force showed him only her death. The dreams had not faded. They grew stronger, clearer, more final. Padme, acute, gone, cold, and in their silence, the Jedi condemned her, not in word, but in inaction. But Palpatine, he offered something else, not answers, but permission on this night. Anakin spoke no riddles, and Palpatine offered none. Only truth, as ancient as the stars, and as cruel as love. Only through me can you achieve a power greater than any Jedi, a power to cheat death. Anakin trembled, not in fear, but in hope. He saw his wife's face, her breath still, her hand limp, and then he saw it differently, alive, held in his hands. He asked, "Is it possible?" And Palpatine did not lie, not from a Jedi. The name was spoken then, with no disguise. Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord, long hidden beneath the robes of the Republic's highest seat. Anakin's blade should have ignited. Instead, he hesitated. The truth was not a dagger. It was a mirror. He did not report to the Council immediately. He waited, because part of him already knew what would come next. When he did speak, Mace Windu took the warning not as a truth spoken in pain, but as a threat whispered by danger. "Stay behind," Windu ordered. "If what you say is true, you will have gained my trust." And in that moment, Anakin knew there was nothing left to gain. The Jedi had already cast him aside, already marked him, already feared him. So when they left, he followed, not out of loyalty, but out of need. In the Chancellor's chamber, Mace confronted Sida. Words were blades. Then blades were drawn. The Sith struck. The Jedi countered, and Anakin arrived as the storm broke. He saw Sidious weakened, face twisted by his own lightning. He saw Mace's saber, poised to end it all. And he chose. He did not choose the Sith. He chose Padme. He chose the dream over the code, the fear over the faith. He struck Windu down, and with that single act, the galaxy fractured. The Jedi were no longer his people. They were traitors. Sidious did not roar in triumph. He smiled. Not because the Jedi had fallen, because Anakin had. He knelt, not because he desired power, because he had no other path left. "I will do whatever you ask. Just help me save her." And so, the gift was given. A new name, a mask not of metal, but of fate. Darth Vader, not a warrior. A vow, an oath, sealed in blood, to serve the dark for the sake of love. But love, when twisted by fear, does not heal it. Corrupts, and the Force, once balanced precariously on prophecy, now trembled. The wound had opened, and the wound had spoken. Chapter 9. The Fire at the Temple's Heart. It was not a purge. It was a prophecy, dressed in fire and betrayal. Darth Vader rose before the name had settled in his bones. The mask was still unseen. But the man who had once been Anakin was no more. The promise had been made. The path was sealed to save Padme. He would break the galaxy. Sidious whispered orders with a voice soaked in centuries of rot. Go to the Jedi Temple. Leave none alive. Anakin did not question. Because this was not war. It was penance for doubting, for delay, for the death he had seen but had not yet prevented. He ignited his blade, Skywalker's saber, Jedi weapon, now a harbinger of darkness. The temple gates did not resist him. They opened as if in mourning. The clone legion followed, silent, efficient, loyal. They did not see a traitor. They saw a general. The younglings gathered in the council chamber. They recognized him. They called him Master. One stepped forward. Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do? He looked at the child, eyes wide with trust. The blue blade rose, and the Force shuddered, not in anger, in sorrow. Not even the dark side celebrated, because what happened next was not power, it was erasure. Each scream that echoed through the halls was a chord severed from the music of the Force. The archives burned. The statues crumbled. Ancient holocrons blinked out, like stars devoured by a black hole. And above it all, Vader moved like a shadow wrapped in light. A thing that had no name. Elsewhere, across the stars, Order 66 was spoken, and Jedi fell. Not in battle, but in betrayal, one by one. The Guardians of Peace were devoured by the very armies they had led. Ki Adi Mundi, shot down by troops he had defended. Alla Secura, gunned down mid-step. Blo Kun, falling from the sky in every corner of the Republic. The light was snuffed. The temple, once the beating heart of the Jedi, now became a tomb. The fire reached its highest chamber, and there Anakin found what was left of himself. For a moment, just a breath, he hesitated. The ash clung to his robes. The voices of the dead whispered from broken holy books, and the ghost of a child passed him without fear, because some part of Anakin still lingered, still asked, "What have I done?" But it was quickly silenced. This was the price, the cost, of love, the path to save her. He walked into the flame not as a warrior, but as a wound, and the galaxy bled with him. Chapter 10, Twilight on Mustafar. Even the stars looked away when love met its death in fire. The blood had not dried on the temple stones, but Vader was sent again to Mustafar. The order was simple: destroy the separatist leaders, end the war. But Sidious had already won. This was no battle. It was cleansing, and Vader obeyed. He walked among the traitors in his Jedi robes, face uncovered, voice calm. They welcomed him. "Lord Vader," they said, "surely we are saved." He slaughtered them without answer. The room grew red, not from the lava outside, but from the reflection of death on polished floors. Each scream echoed off the high volcanic walls and was swallowed by flame. The war ended not with treaties, but with silence, peace delivered by betrayal, and still his thoughts remained elsewhere. Padme, she would live, because he had done this, because he had earned her life back. But fate does not trade in mercy, only illusions. When she arrived, Mustafar did not shake. It waited. Her ship descended, shining and fragile against the black sky, and Anakin ran to her. There was still love in his face. "I did this for us," he said. "I can overthrow the Emperor. We can rule together." She recoiled. "You're breaking my heart." He did not understand. He had saved her, the child, their future, and still she wept. OBI-1 emerged from the shadows, not summoned, but guided by the Force, and in that moment Anakin died again. "This is how you repay me," he roared. "You brought him here to kill me, Padme collapsed. The breath knocked from her not by power, but by loss. And the fire inside Anakin was no longer grief, it was rage. They fought along the lava flows, blades clashing like thunder, memories burned into every strike. Master against student, brother against brother. The sky turned black. The air screamed. Each word cut deeper than the sabers. You were the chosen one. You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. Anakin's face twisted, eyes yellowed, roared back. I hate you. But the battle had already ended. Obi-Wan's blade found the high ground, and in one final merciful stroke, he ended it. Anakin fell, body broken, limbs severed. He burned in the fires of Mustafar as the sky rained molten tears. Obi-Wan could not finish him, not because of weakness, but because of love. I loved you, he whispered. Before turning away, the flames took what was left, not just of the man, but of the myth, and the Force wept. Chapter 1:1 The Birth of the Mask. There are deaths that end, and deaths that begin. The flames had left nothing whole, not the flesh, not the mind, not the man, Anakin Skywalker. What remained of him was gathered in shadow. The air was poison, the heat unbearable. But he lived, not by will, by design. Sidious came not in mourning, but in triumph. His apprentice, broken, shattered, ash-stained, was exactly what he needed. The boy full of dreams was no use to the Sith. But this husk of grief and agony, this ruin of loyalty and rage, this he could mold. Droids lifted him from the banks of hell, and silence followed. Back on Coruscant, in a chamber colder than the void, a ritual unlike any Jedi healing was begun. No prayers, no light, no comfort, only construction. Bones replaced, flesh sealed, lungs replaced with mechanics, limbs forged from war, not birth. And finally, the mask, a face not meant to reflect, but to erase. Its breath was not natural. It was a curse. Its visor did not see. It hunted. The final screws tightened. The final seals locked. And for the first time, the galaxy heard the sound that would haunt systems for decades. The breath of Darth Vader. It was not a name now. It was a sound, a rhythm of fear. But Sidious was not finished. He stood before the reborn thing and gave his final, cruel offering. Padme is dead. The words struck harder than the lava. He did not rage at first. He listened, and when the silence confirmed it, he screamed. The room shook. Machines bent, walls cracked, and the Force, the very Force, reeled. This was no longer sorrow. It was a wound, given voice, an eternal scream trapped behind a breath that would never end. Anakin Skywalker died again, not in fire, but in despair. Watched not as a master, but as a witness to his masterpiece. The chosen one was no longer a prophecy. He was a weapon, and so he stood. Darth Vader, encased in fear, forged in love, twisted into hate. His heartbeat replaced by machinery. His voice, now thunder behind a mask. The temple was gone. The Republic was dead. The Jedi scattered like ashdot. All that remained was the Empire. And at its black heart, a breathing shadow. He would not sleep. He would not rest. He would serve until the Force itself forgot his name. Chapter 12 The Empire of Silence. When tyrants rise, the galaxy does not scream. It whispers, then forgets. The Jedi were gone, but not all at once. Not with fire alone. They were unwritten from record, from song, from memory. 1,000 temples crumbled, holocrons sealed in vaults, names forbidden to speak aloud, and from the ashes rose the empire. Its birth was not hailed with celebration, but with silence. Worlds bowed, not out of loyalty, but out of fear, for they had seen what the emperor could do, and worse, what his shadow could become. Darth Vader did not command armies, he haunted them. He was a myth to the Outer Rim, a curse to traitors, a dread to his own. A Star Destroyer was a fortress, but Vader was a storm. He walked its halls in silence, his breath the only warning. His presence bent steel. Officers feared to speak his name. Stormtroopers avoided his path. He did not shout. He did not debate. He executed. A thought of disobedience, snapped neck, a whisper of rebellion, choked from across a room. He ruled with no need to rule, because dread did it for him. The Senate still stood, but its power was theater. The Emperor watched all through bureaucrats and spies. But Vader enforced reality. He hunted those who remembered, those who dared to hope. Rumors spread of Jedi survivors, whispers mostly, but whispers are enough to ignite resistance. And so the Inquisitorius was born, twisted Force sensitives, broken and bled to serve Vader's hand. But even they feared him. He trained them not with patience, but pain. One failed to bow, a limb removed, another questioned, thrown from the spire's edge. To train beneath Vader was to learn that mercy was heresy. The galaxy adjusted. It always does. Children no longer dreamed of stars. They feared the sound of a breathing ghost stepping from smoke-dot planets submitted before he arrived, because he always arrived, and when he did not speak of the Force. He used it like a blade, like a noose, but in that shadow, not all hope was lost. Flickers stirred, cells of resistance, smugglers bearing secrets, farm boys asking questions. Vader sensed them, but not fully, for beneath his mask a name still trembled, buried under circuit, screaming under breath. Anakin, the Emperor, had warned him, "Let go of your past, or it will destroy you." But even he, even Sidious, could not sever memory completely, especially when memory was shaped like a woman with a child in her arms, especially when that child still lived, unseen, unknown, but felt. A ripple in the Force, a disturbance. The breath of Vader deepened for the first time in years. He looked not outward, but inward, and the silence he ruled began to crack. Chapter 1-3. The boy with his father's eyes. Even stars cannot hide a lineage the Force has marked. The galaxy turned, years passed, and in the Outer Rim, far from thrones and star destroyers, a boy looked to the sky, not knowing why, not knowing who. He was named Luke Skywalker, and already the Force watched him. It did not shout, it waited. Owen Lars, the uncle, Beru, the aunt. Simple farmers, but they guarded more than moisture. They guarded a secret burning like a second sun, the boy's father dead. They said, a pilot in the Clone Wars, a hero, but lies are the softest cages. And Luke, curious, restless, drawn to Stas, was not meant to remain caged. In his dreams, he saw worlds beyond Tatooine, suns rising over cities, metal giants walking through fire. He did not understand, but the Force does not need understanding, only awakening. And so it began. An old man in the desert, cloaked in silence. OBI-1. No longer a general, no longer a Jedi Master, now only a ghost waiting. He had watched the boy grow. He had spoken with no one. He had endured, because the chosen one's son was his only hope. He gave him a name, not just Luke, but heir. He gave him a saber, not just a weapon, but memory. It was your father's, he whispered, but not all truth can be spoken at once, not yet, not the name Darth Vader, not the breath behind the slaughter. For what would a boy know of betrayal so deep the galaxy still bled from it? Still the Force moved. Droids a message, a rebellion. The spark met air, and Luke followed it away from the farm, away from safety, into myth. He touched a blade made of light. He heard the name of the Jedi, not as curse, but as calling. He flew through space and saw the Empire's face. He learned to trust, not machines, but instinct. He began to feel the Force, and across the galaxy something stirred. A breath quickened. A shadow turned its helm toward the stars. Darth Vader, the name meant death, but now it sensed life. Something, someone, was watching him through the Force, not Sidious, not an enemy, but a presence, hauntingly familiar, a feeling he had not known. Since Musta, father-child had his eyes, and the Force whispered, though he denied it. Skywalker. He crushed the thought. He silenced the name, but the truth had already been planted, and truth, like children, grows even in darkness. Chapter 14. The Trap at Cloud City. Some truths are not revealed, they are ripped into being. The boy was rising. Each step he took into legend. The Force thickened around him. It did not guide, it warned. But the young do not listen to storms until they are inside them. Luke Skywalker, son of flame, stepped boldly where the Jedi once feared. He trained, he trusted, he believed, but not in the full truth Obi-Wan had taught. Him the name Vader, a killer, a tyrant, a shadow in armor. He had not spoken of the name Anakin. He had not said what all masters of silence know, that the most terrible truths are born from family. And so the trap was laid, not by Palpatine, but by Vader himself. He did not wish to kill the boy. He wished to claim him, not as prey, as heir, for the darkness had whispered what his mind would not allow. This child, this boy of suns and desert dust, was his dot, and so Cloud City, in its floating grace, became a theater of destiny. Bespin, where the clouds held silence, and the wind carried screams. Lando betrayed them, not by will, but by fear. Leia captured, Han frozen, Chewbacca chained, and Luke came, alone, afraid, but called. He stepped into the carbonite halls, as if into a dream, half-formed, half-dash foretold. The doors closed behind him, and Vader waited. Their duel was not a test of skill. It was a ritual. Blades hissed, sparks flew. The past fought the future. Luke was swift, driven by pain. But Vader was inevitability. He struck not to kill, but to teach, to show the boy how little he truly knew. He pressed him back into the darkness of machine halls, into the bones of the city. And then the saber rose, a flash, a scream, a hand severed. Luke cried out, not just in pain, but in understanding. He was not ready. He hung over the abyss, and then Vader spoke, not as a conqueror, as a father. I am your father. The Force rippled. Time fractured. A scream echoed into myth. No, but lies have shape. And truth, sharper still. He had not killed Anakin. He was Anakin. The face behind the mask was not a monster, but a memory, and Luke fell. He chose death over truth, chose the void over lineage, But the Force, the cursed, sacred Force, would not let him die. It held him. Leia heard his call. Another whisper in the bloodline. Another truth still unborn. The falcon rose through the clouds and caught the falling sun. But something else fell that day. Certainty. Luke no longer knew himself. His hand was gone. His trust betrayed. His name fractured. He was not only Skywalker. He was Vader's son. And across the stars, a mask turned toward the black. Not in victory, in longing. The boy had rejected him. But blood speaks louder than belief, and destiny was not finished. Chapter 15. The Emperor's Will. The deepest evil does not shout. It waits, smiling, behind every choice, in the dark heart of the galaxy, beneath black spires and throne room. Silence, he waited. Darth Sidious, the Emperor, the Sith ascended. He had no need of armor, no need of blade, for his true weapon was the galaxy itself. The war had been his, the Jedi his prey, the Senate his stage. He had rewritten the Republic into empire with a whisper and a grin. But even emperors fear one thing, legacy. The chosen one had failed him. Vader, once the instrument of Sith domination, was no longer enough. He had seen the hesitation, felt the fracture, felt the boy, Luke Skywalker, a new vessel, a new air dot, and so he watched. He let the rebellion burn hot, but never bright enough to reach him. He let the boy grow strong, but not free, for he knew the rhythm of destiny. He had orchestrated it once. He would do so again. Let the Father bring the Son. Let them both kneel. Let one strike the other, and let that hate crown a new Sith. It was not vengeance he sought. It was continuity. The rule of two was not a doctrine. It was a promise that power would always survive. Vader, he knew, was faltering. The dark side still lived in him, but so too did something else, doubt, whispers of Podmem, ghosts of Moose, echoes in the breath beneath the helmet. The boy had awakened it. Sidious watched from his throne, and saw the future twist, not into peace, but into testing. The final trial for father and son was approaching. Let them come. Let the son seek redemption. Let the father resist. Then, when love fails, as it always fails, strike. Corrupt the child. Bury the father. Continue the line. This was the Emperor's will, not passion, not fear, not rage, but control. He was no longer Sith by passion. He was Sith made pure, the embodiment of all that survives when the soul is removed. A husk of hatred, a relic of rot, the black heart of the Force itself, given voice, and so he waited on his throne above Ender's moon, in a spire of knives and shadow. He laid the trap, not for victory, but for inevitability. He had foreseen the paths. The son would come, the father would hesitate, and in that moment Sidious would have both. A lineage subsumed, a prophecy twisted, a Skywalker reborn in darkness. Chapter 16. The Return to Ender. The forest watches. The Force listens, and the storm begins to gather. The stars dimmed as war approached. Above the forest moon of Endor, a second Death Star waited, unfinished yet alive, its heart already beating with power. The rebellion stirred with final hope, a plan, a strike, a desperate gamble. But for the son of Skywalker, this was no battle of fleets or fire. It was the moment long foreseen. Luke knew, he felt it. His path no longer led only outward, it led inward, toward the darkness that bore him. He stood before his sister Leia, and whispered the truth that burned within his blood. I am your brother. And with those words, the last lie fell. Not only was Luke a Jedi, he was the twin flame of a destiny split by pain. Leia, daughter of Bam, daughter of Anakin. They were two halves of one myth, one in royalty, one in prophecy. But only Luke would face the Father, and so he went alone into shadow, into surrender. For to face Vader, he could not strike first. He could not meet hate with blade. He must meet it with faith. He gave himself to the Empire, bound his hands, lowered his gaze. The stormtroopers did not understand, but Vader did. He saw the boy, the saber at his side, the calm that hid the storm within, and something ancient stirred beneath the mask. Luke spoke not as prisoner, but as son. There is still good in you, he said, and the words wounded. Vader denied. Vader deflected, but he did not kill. He took the boy to the Emperor to test, to tempt, to see what would break. And below them, Ender bloomed with rebellion. Small creatures forgotten by history rose with stones and sticks, and in their defiance, the Force smiled. The great machines stumbled. The proud legions fell. The smallest had become instruments of the galaxy's final balance. Above, in the throne room of shadows, the trap was sprung. Sidious watched Luke kneel, watched the fear, watched the fire, and smiled. The saber beside the boy was not a weapon. It was a test. Strike me down, he whispered, and take your place. And the boy wavered. He reached for it, and the father watched. Would he rise, as Vader once did? Would the sun complete the circle? No, for Vader had been forged in anger. But Luke resisted, until the threat came. If you will not turn, then perhaps she will. Leia, the name was not a taunt, it was a trigger, and Luke ignited. Saber flaring, rage rising, he struck, not as a Jedi, as a brother protecting blood. The duel began again. Father and son, blades crashing like memory, breath grinding like stone. Luke pressed harder, stronger, until Vader faltered, until the machine bent, until a hand was severed. A mirror, the same wound, and Luke saw himself, a breath, a pause, a choice. He cast aside the saber. I am a Jedi, he whispered, like my father before me. And Sidious, for the first time, snarled. He rose. Arcs of lightning spilled from his hands. Not metaphor, but death. The Force burned Luke's flesh, and Vader watched. He watched his son scream. He watched the Emperor devour. And in that moment, Anakin Skywalker, the name long buried, awoke. He lifted the Emperor. Lightning scorched. His armor, screams, tore the sky, and he cast Sidious into the pit. Darkness screamed, and then was silence. Chapter 17. The death of Darth Vader. Beneath the armor lies a face. Beneath the name, a soul long buried. The throne room was quiet now. Smoke curled like ghosts above the shattered floor. Lightning wounds still pulsed in Luke's trembling form, but he was not alone. Vader had risen, not as destroyer, not as Sith, but as father. He stood hunched, sparking, broken, but free. For Sidious was dead, his scream cast into endless shadow. The throne lay empty, the darkness severed, and Anakin Skywalker, not Vader, remained. He turned to his son, each breath rattling, each step a toll paid in pain. Luke ran to him, he caught him. He held him, not as warrior to warrior, but as son to father. And the voice came, warped by machine. softened by memory. "You were right," he said. "There was good in me." He collapsed. The metal lungs wheezed their last, and Luke, kneeling, begged, "Let me save you." But Anakin shook his head. "You already have." There, in the blue glow of death, a father found peace. But the man beneath the mask had not seen the sky in decades, and so he asked, with fading strength, "Let me look on you with my own eyes." And Luke, weeping, removed the helmet. What remained was not fearsome. No legend, no monster, only a face, pale, scarred, human. Eyes that had seen war, fire, love lost, and finally, forgiveness. The last breath left him not as Vader, but as Anakin. He died not in hate, but in light. The prophecy, long twisted by time, fulfilled itself not in power, but in sacrifice. For, to destroy the Sith, one must first destroy the self. Anakin had done both, and so the son wept. He carried the body, heavy with myth, through the corridors of the dying fortress. The Death Star trembled, its core collapsed, its tyrant gone, and Luke alone found a shuttle and fled behind him. The moon watched below, dash the forest burned with the joy of freedom. The rebellion had won. The war was ending. But Luke did not join the celebration. He built a pyre on the forest floor. He laid the armor upon it, the cold shell that once held both horror and hope. He lit the fire, not in hatred, in honor. The flames rose, and the smoke, carrying all that he was, drifted into the stars. Chapter 18: The Return of the Jedi. The fire has burned. The shadow has fallen. But still the Force breathes. Dawn came slowly to Endor, not in light, but in laughter. The Empire had fallen. The tyrant was ash. And through trees, both ancient and wild, freedom sang. The rebels danced among the ruins. The small ones UX beat drums on broken helmets. A war machine turned to music, but one among them stood apart. Luke Skywalker. He had seen the fire, felt the final breath of the man called both monster and father. He had walked through fire and not become flame. He had cast aside the blade when vengeance called, and in that choice he returned, not as apprentice, not as soldier, but as Jedi, the first and the last, of an old order reborn in a new truth. He stood upon a ridge as the fire faded into memory, and there, in the quiet between heartbeats, they came, not ghosts, not echoes, not presences, Yoda, Obi-Wan. And beside them, Anakin, no helmet, no armor, only robes and peace. He stood as he once was, before the fall, before Mustafar, before the screams. Luke saw the truth, and it did not wound him, it healed. The Jedi had returned not through temples, or trials, or codes, but through compassion, the very thing the old Jedi feared, the very thing the Sith twisted. It had saved the galaxy, not war, not power, but love. Leia came to him. She did not speak. She knew, twin children of a shattered lineage, and from that fracture a new hope. The prophecy, so long debated, had not lied, but none had understood. The chosen one was not a warrior, not a conqueror, not a god. He was a man, broken, haunted, and, in the end, redeemed. The balance had not been a blade, it had been a choice, and the Force, that great mystery, that eternal breath, was still, not silent, not sleeping, but content. Luke turned from the fire, not to forget, but to carry. He would rebuild. not in pride, but in humility, for he knew now, legends are not born of triumph, they are born of surrender. And so the last echo fades. Vader is gone, Anakin is at peace. The Jedi return not to dominate, not to command, but to serve in balance, in hope, in love. This is the end of the whisper, but not the end of the Force.